You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
The good doctors.
It is so good, as always, to be back at the table with you. How have you been?
It's been a little while. We had a little small hiatus, just a small hiatus. And so it is absolutely wonderful to be back at the table with you, bro. Been busy.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Life's been lifing.
Listen. All day, every day, and twice on Sundays, as they say.
I'm starting to think it's 3 times on Sunday. I'm thinking some little extra times on there. Yes, indeed. A lot's been happening. The weather's been changing. The season's been changing. It's been going back and forth. We're wrapping up our semesters.
Yes. And I tell you, and this weather has just been crazy, just flip-flopping back and forth. And, I don't do well with this weather. Just get to a place and stay there for me. I'm okay with change, but when it comes to the weather, my body just loses its mind, and so that's when my allergies act up. And see, right now, you can't cough, you can't sneeze, you can't do anything because everybody looking like, is that COVID,
And some people don't know, and that is the truth. It has definitely manifested. Yeah. And It's coming back around. It's giving some people a second, a third, and a fourth kick.
Yes, it is. Exactly. As they say, COVID is COVIDing, as they say. Exactly.
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and now 24.
Exactly. It makes no sense. But it is what it is, And you know how we do. We just going to keep on smiling through it and do what we do right here at the table. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, but we still got some good things happening, and I'm excited about today's conversation.
I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Oh, yeah. We talk about, our students a lot on the show and their successes and all or whatever. And it's nothing, for me, how I feel, especially this time of year, getting into graduation, season commencement and all or whatever. And I'm always excited, but I'm excited when I get to see my students cross that finish line, And so even though this isn't one of my students currently in the program at Hampton, this is one of my students today that we're going to talk to from years ago, and just seeing the beginning of this journey for her. I'm excited about the conversation because there's a lot that I think she is going to be able to share with folks who want to begin this journey that may have just a little, some hesitancy in terms of beginning this journey. But like I always tell people, the first, the journey starts with that first step. So, but anyway, how we do, sis. I'm going to go ahead and let you get started because, as always, I keep my eye on that buffet and I see it's getting started. They're stocking the buffet and they just brought out the bacon. And so I like
we like to be first in line for that bacon.
What they say? First fruits. I'm going to get the first fruits. When I see them put that bacon, I'm going to get the first fruits off the top.
I appreciate that. And I already know you coming back with some good stuff.
Yeah, honey butter and them biscuits. I got you.
That's all I need in my life. That's all I need in my life. I am excited about the conversation we're going to have today. What I love most about it is because it's about education. And that is a key piece for us is, we are lifelong learners. And a lot of times people like to put time constraints on those things or feel like they have to do things by a certain pace that other people have done. But here at the table, we are fans of the fact that the race has never been given to the swift, but is always to the one that endures until the end, and that it's not over until you have actually finished. There's so many people out there in the world who are ABD, and they're ABD for so many different reasons, but it's something about pushing forward, persevering, trusting the process, working through the process, and definitely finishing the process. And so I want to have that conversation today, that it's never too late to really begin that process, to jump into that process. So I want to welcome to the table the newly minted, freshly certified Dr. Keisha Samuels.
Yes, welcome to the table, Dr. Samuel.
Thank you for having me today. Thank you so much.
Let's say that one more time. Dr. Keisha Samuels.
All right.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I've got to get used to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, tell us how you feel. That part. First of all, let's kind of capture those feelings real quick.
I feel relieved.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it's kind of like how when you've been in trauma so long, you don't even realize that you're in it. But then when you come out of it, you realize just what you were going through. So it was immediately a sense of relief. This past week, my sleep has been so good because I'm done.
You didn't even know that you had been holding your breath.
No.
And then all of a sudden you're able to breathe. I liken it to a birthing process.
Yes, absolutely.
It definitely is like, I didn't have amnesia when I birthed my daughter. I remembered everything that went along with that process. But some people, after they birth, they look at the baby, they're like, look how beautiful this is. And then they kind of forget and they start living and moving on with that dream. But it is a full process. It's a full development process going through the dissertation. There are a lot of doctors in the world. There's a lot of people who are doctors, a lot of people who would like to be doctors, but that process,
it's
it's not for the faint of heart.
No,
not at all. Now, and I will say this, I always tell my students, for the first month or two, you're going to have those moments of PTSD. I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking that I had lost something. I was like, did I save it? Because, I would say every change I would save on a jump drive, I would email it to myself, and then I would save it in the cloud. Because I said there was not going to be any way, shape, or form I was going to lose it anywhere. That was my thing. And I remember a few nights waking up thinking, did I save it? It's like, where is it? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm done.
Yes, I can definitely relate.
Yes. Because no one wants to lose all of their work. That you've put together in the thought of trying to recreate it. So just expect that and know that that's normal. Okay, that's a normal part of the process. So I don't want you to think you're losing your mind, anything like that or whatever. You don't need to go check yourself in or anything like that or whatever.
No medication necessary.
Exactly. It's okay. All right. It's normal. It's a part of the process.
Well, thank you for the confirmation. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Let's go back a little bit, Dr. Samuels. Let's go back a little bit. What made you know that was a decision for you? Because you have to know that you want to do that. You can't just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to be a doctor one day, because it's work that's necessary. So when did you know?
It was back in 1992. My brother was graduating from Howard University, and I remember we went up to his graduation. And I remember seeing just a crowd of beautiful Black people, but I noticed that there were some who had these gowns and these, what I called a funny hat at the time. And I remember asking my mom, why is their gown different? Why do they have those big Black things on their gown? And my mom said, they're doctors. They have PhDs. And I said, at the time, I didn't know what a PhD was. So I was just like, oh, like my doctor I go to? And she said, no, they're doctors in education and research. And that moment, I said, I want that gown and I want that hat. What do I need to do to ensure that is me one day? So that was the seed that was planted for me at my brother's graduation in 1992.
What was he getting? What type of degree was your brother getting?
He was getting a degree in public administration.
Okay. You just never know what door that opens. I want to know who else you would have bumped into in that area. Like, sometimes in different schools during graduations, they separate by schools. So I didn't know if he was also, if education was just kind of in your blood or ingrained, or
No, not. I mean, I'm the baby of 10. And so most of my siblings went
Did you
are
see our eyes?
I am the baby of 10. And so
Sweet baby
um
Jesus.
yes. And so a few of my siblings, they're HU grads. My
All
brother is
right.
Howard. And I was the oddball who decided to go to Norfolk State, but I went to Norfolk State for the program that they
And,
had.
and we love you. We love you. Behold.
We
We
won't
love you
treat you
too.
any differently. We won't treat you any differently. That's for sure.
Well, thank you.
All are welcome at the table. Because you know I'm biased. I'm gonna say there's Spellman and everybody else.
Wait a minute. What is the everybody else part? That's see?
Right.
So, but all jokes aside, I like the fact that education, that your mother was able to share that with you, because a lot of times people don't have the answers to questions, but she had enough of an answer that was able to inspire you to seek more.
Yes.
get
And
more,
my
to
mother
be
had an
more.
8th grade education. She
Wow.
had an 8th grade education, and my mother cleaned for a living, but education was something that she was going to ensure what we were going to be educated. That was the one thing. She would say, I can't help you with your homework, baby, but I'm gonna find somebody that can. And so my mother, I always knew that education was a way up and out for me to
It was
make
a liberating factor. It was a liberating factor.
Yes.
Is your mother still with us?
She is not. She passed away when I was 19 years old. So I got all of those gems early on in life. And it was so much sweeter when I defended 2 weeks ago, just to know that I had always promised her that was something that I would do. And my mother said something to me many years ago. She said to me, I clean toilets so you don't have to. And whatever table you arrive at, you need to know that's where you're supposed to be. So even though she had limited education, she was one of the most intelligent people that I have ever met. And her model of kindness and love and grace are some of the pillars that have carried me and still sustain me to where I am today.
That's all right.
Your mother would be so proud. Oh, she would be so proud of you and how you have held on to all of those jewels and have actually used them. Used them.
Yes. It makes a big difference, And when you look at scenarios or situations like that, we may not often have the answers, okay, or even, have been where you were, but to have someone who can say, listen, be better than me, don't be like me, even though being like them may be a good thing. However, to have that person say, do better. And I think even as a parent, we want our children to do better than we are, and that's the piece of pushing our children, pushing people around us to do better. One of the things I always tell my students as well, when you get these degrees, you're not finished.
No.
You're not finished. You have a responsibility to get someone else to across that line. Reach out to someone else and encourage someone else to do that, because I can say for certain, we are not here because of ourselves. We have to look at the tables that we have been allowed to sit at. We have to look at the conversations that have been had about us in rooms when we really were not even present. Those were the things that have helped us to get to where we are, and I'm certainly thankful. And so that's why I always tell people you have to pay it forward.
Yes.
You certainly have to pay it forward. Encourage the next person, to do that. So, but tell us about your journey in terms of, education. We mentioned that school on the other side of the water, so that's where it started. Mama said you're going. Now, I don't know if mama said you're going to be whole, but you did. Okay. So let's talk about that, where it all started at Norfolk State.
So for me, Norfolk State, I entered as a freshman social work major in 1994 and loved the program, had a great experience until September 1995 when my mother passed away. Extremely hard time. I was the child who absolutely adored, loved, worshiped my mother. And that was a very trying, I was 19, so my frontal lobe won't even all the way develop. So it was a very trying time for me, but I have to say that I fell in love with Norfolk State when my mother passed. The faculty and staff in the Ethrin R. Strong School of Social Work refused to let me just say, okay, we're gonna watch you by the wayside. No, they held me. I don't even remember submitting assignments that semester. It was just all a blur. But they held me down and they gave me what I needed until I felt strong enough to really just keep moving on my own. So my journey was very hard. I went from being a carefree 19-year-old, being on campus, having fun, going to the sweat box, all that stuff, to I got to get a job because I got to figure out how I'm going to live. And so the journey was not easy for me. So I went to school full time in the day and I worked at UPS at night. And I did that until I graduated. When I graduated, I got what I thought was a great job at the time. I just wanted to make my age. I was 24. If I could make $24,000, I was happy. And I said, each year, I just want to make my age. Well, that quickly changed when you start paying me.
Okay.
So,
Thank God for the growth of goals.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I got my first job as a foster care social worker working for the city of Hampton. Great, great, great experience. And I left there after a few years, went to Norfolk DSS, and I was an intense intake social worker there. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I just loved the fact of being a social worker. I love being able to serve and be there for some of the most vulnerable and to help them to come up with a plan. So I love social work. I love working it. I love learning about it. I loved everything. A couple of years later, I went into Hampton City Schools and I started there as what they used to call a middle school coordinator. I was working at Spratly Middle School at the time, which doesn't even exist anymore. Went on from there, decided to go back and get my master's degree. I got my first master's degree from Old Dominion, and I got that in curriculum and instruction. Great program, had a great experience, and that's where I learned pedagogy. That's where I learned really what it meant to be able to teach, what it meant to understand curriculum, to write curriculum, standards, measures, all that good stuff. So that stuff gets me going. I love it.
I hear the excitement in your voice.
So I love research. So it was just great for me. But I didn't feel satisfied. And so something in me kept saying, I really wanted to get my MSW, but at the time, Norfolk State did not have an online program. And I really needed something that was more online, more flexible, more for working people. And so I decided to go back to Norfolk State, but I got my master's degree in counseling. And that's where Dr. Mason and I met. He was my instructor. I was pregnant with my son while I was doing the program.
You can never just do one thing. You can't just do one thing.
No, I can't just do one thing. First master's, I was pregnant with my daughter. Second master's, I was pregnant with my son. So,
Listen, you just had your doctorate degree. Is it something you need to share with us?
No. My husband and I cleared that up immediately.
Okay, just started. Okay.
Because it says every time you go back to school, you get pregnant.
Okay, I'm just checking. You might have twins this time. Who knows?
No, we are done. Shop is closed. And so, so I went back, got my second master's in counseling, and I felt like, oh God, this is it. Like it was just such a great transition with my social work foundation, understanding curriculum and instruction and how to teach, and now oh my God, it was amazing. And so I worked in Hampton City Schools for 15 years, and I started as a middle school coordinator, and I ended as a part of the administrative team working at Phoebus High School as the graduation specialist. Absolutely loved it. Opportunity opened up for me because I wanted to really use that curriculum and instruction degree that I got from Old Dominion. So I said, I would love to teach. I think I love to teach. I think so, right? I think so. So the opportunity presented itself for me to begin teaching as an adjunct professor, teaching SDV, which is the university course, student development course. And that was in 2012. And doors just began to open for me. Then I started teaching in human services. So I started teaching my love and what I feel like that I was destined to do here on earth. And then I became full-time faculty. I was hired as a full-time faculty member. They brought me in at assistant professor rank. I then went on to become department chair a little bit later. Then I was the associate dean. Then I was the dean for the last 4 years. And it was just last July that I made the decision to step down from my deanship because I really needed to finish my doctorate. I began my doctoral work February 2020, 1 month before the pandemic hit and the world shut down. And I say, oh my God, if I had known this was coming, I would not have did it. But what I showed myself, because I kept putting off that doctoral, I'm like, okay, I got 2 master's degree, I'm already, and I don't need that. But it would not leave me. The desire would not leave my heart.
You needed that hat. You needed that hat.
The hat and them bars, that's it.
The hat and bars.
Right. It would not leave me. And even though imposter syndrome is real, and the reason why I kept putting it off was because I would say, God, can I really do that? Can I really do that? And then, I would have something over here saying, girl, you know who you are. Do you know who you are? Of course you can do it. Of course. And so throughout the pandemic, during my deanship, leading a whole division, standing up a campus, doing all of these things, taking care of my family. I did all of that during the pandemic and completed all of my coursework successfully. So I proved to myself that, yes, it's hard. It's hard. But you know what? Nothing in life worth having comes easy. And that's what I was reminded. And I literally have over in my house statements of things my mother would say to me. You Miss Mary's baby. Don't forget whose team you on. I clean toilets so you don't have to. You got it. You ain't deaf, dumb, or retarded. You got it. I would have those things up as encouragement to me when I would get down on myself. Because I consider myself, and my colleagues consider me, a social worker. That I can pull anybody out. But when it comes to me, I'm so hard on myself because I have expectations and I never want to let anyone down. But I will often find myself being the hardest on myself. And so that is my journey. I've been
welcome to the club. That's right. Welcome to the doctor's club. That's what that means. That's what that wholeheartedly means.
Yeah.
Our biggest critics.
Yes.
No one can touch us like we can touch ourselves. It doesn't happen. Nothing we say will get to us the way that it will get to us what we say within ourselves. It's our internal speech that really dictates how we think about and see so many things. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I want to step back for a second because you shared something that really explains a lot for me now. You got a master's in curriculum and instruction. And Keisha can write. I will tell you this, it's something as a professor, when you come across students with certain gifts, and that was one of the things that I noticed about Keisha as a student. Her writing was at a different level. And I told her then, I remember having that conversation of, what are you going to do with this? But she, and not a but or just or anything like that. She was a student in counseling. Okay. And oftentimes we have to work through those things because we are more of people of giving and helping, and not necessarily in terms of writing. We have to, really work with our students on this side of the house to really hone in on their writing skills. But she was there. And I remember that conversation about, what are you going to do with this? And I'm quick to tell someone, you need to work on that doctorate degree, because you can write, so that explains a lot. And I never knew that until you just said that. And right now, that you had that background in curriculum and instruction. So that certainly, definitely, plays a role in that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that piece with me. That says a whole lot. So.
Dr. Mason, I met Keisha way at the end of her journey while she was just trying to wrap it up. She was struggling just a little bit at that moment with some feedback that she had received, and she was taking it personal. And I remember pulling her aside, and we were in a loud gymnasium full of children running up and down, bouncing balls, but. It was just one of those days. And I remember you just being overwhelmed, Keisha. And I was like, listen, this is that process. And you have to do what you have to until you can do what you want to. And I told her that day that she had everything in her that she needed to finish that task. And so I think it's amazing that you had said that to her years before. She didn't even know that you and I were connected in that regard. I didn't know that she was connected to you in that regard. She just walked up to me and said soror. And anytime somebody says soror and they need to lean on the shield, you got to jump in there and say, what is going on? What do you need? And when she said, she was just having one of those moments that we have when we're going through that process, I said, oh, I recognize this. I can do something. When you talk about paying it forward, that's what it is. Recognizing that in other people and saying, hey, I've been there, but guess what? You don't have to stay there.
That's right.
There is something else on the other side of this process for you. Once you let go of the things that you think you have to carry and realize that those things are not important, you can do what's necessary to get through that process. And so she had to leave a few things beside, but it was worth it. You had to trim a little bit of the fat. You can add all that other stuff. I tell you can add whatever you want when you finish. Once they give you that title, you can say whatever you want to say. But right now, you say what you have to say to get where you need to go and through this process.
Exactly. I used to tell Jason all the time, leave her alone so she can write. She got business to take care of.
Yes. Yes.
It's that type of discipline.
Yes.
And it's disappointing from some people around you, those who are not able to always see that process. If they haven't been through that process, sometimes they can't fully appreciate that process. Just like when Mason and we talk about losing our mothers all the time. And lost yours is a hard thing that you just don't quite understand that process. And so.
Right. Oh yeah, and it's
you got your stripes now. You got your bars now.
But the other thing I want to bring to the table is, share your topic with everyone, because I think, it is certainly a worthy topic for discussion. And I think others certainly can benefit from it, because it not only applies to your particular area, but it's across the board. And I'm gonna stop. I'll let you go ahead and talk about it, and then we'll introduce it, and then we'll talk about it. All right. So tell everybody what was on.
Okay. So I did my dissertation I did a phenomenological study, which is a lived experience study of African American women and the barriers they encounter in community college leadership. I had 2 guiding research questions where I really wanted to understand what that experience was like. So I wanted to know what were the empowerment factors, but I also wanted to know what were the internal, external, and cultural barriers that were impacting one's ability to move through community college leadership. And so my findings were just amazing. I did have to work really, really hard not to include myself, because I felt as if I was living my dissertation. The barriers, the pit holes sometimes that I would encounter on this journey that were beyond me were very challenging. So I had to constantly remind myself that I am trying to learn from others. But what was amazing and astonishing at the same time was that I realized, and I looked at 3 different colleges throughout the Virginia Community College system, and I interviewed 10 ladies across those 3 colleges. Many of our experiences were the same. And when we didn't have experiences that were the same, there were solid mentoring programs in place that really helped to navigate that journey for an African American woman who is entering into this space of moving from a full-time professor, a department chair, to a dean or director, or even into, executive leadership of VP or provost or president. The findings were just amazing. What I found out is that mentoring shows up. And when it doesn't show up, it's evident. But I also discovered that informal mentoring is just kind of embedded within the women that were in my study. They said there was this obligation to help someone else in any way that they could. There was this almost sense of urgency to ensure that you were successful. And so I found that as an empowerment factor, but I also found that as an internal barrier that existed amongst the ladies in the college that I interviewed, that they saw the lack of mentoring as an internal barrier to their success. And so I became so in love with my topic, just really believe in knowing that there is space here for us to really make some systemic changes that can truly affect that change that we need to happen in not only community college leadership, but leadership overall. I can see my findings being applicable to 4 years, to PWIs, to HBCUs, to private schools, to K-12. I can see it being applicable in those areas. So that was the overall gist of my study.
Okay.
You were finding that they needed mentorship, that there was a lack of mentorship opportunities, and that those things would make a difference.
Yes.
And where did you figure out where we should get it from? Or was there any suggestions from the participants as to where?
So we had, in particular, I had 2 participants that they actually had formal mentoring programs, formal in their college, that when you were hired as a mid-level manager or higher, you were assigned a mentor. And those were some of the same women that their perspective on how their journey had been was very different than those who did not have mentoring or formal mentoring program. Leaning on things like your informal mentorship, leaning on things like different professional development. Professional development was another thing that came out that was something that these women said that they needed, and they got it in some forms, but not what they felt they needed to move to that next level of leadership because of funding, because of, different barriers that were occurring within their schools. They just did not have that. And the other thing that came out of my study that was kind of a commonality between all of the ladies was their work-life balance, and how the job is just, it never stops. It never stops. There's an unspoken kind of joke that goes on within our system that being a dean is the hardest job that there is in all of the Virginia Community College system. It's an extremely hard job. You go from very high level strategic planning to the level of, oh, let me fix the schedule. Oh, we don't have no paper in the copier. Let me put the paper in the copier. So you just have to be all things, and you have to constantly move. The emails constantly come. Someone needs you, working with faculty. So it is all encompassing, and that work-life balance sometimes really takes a back seat to the demands of the job.
Now, let me ask you this, because we talk about that work-life balance, and as you can see, the topic can really go across different career patterns, because of course it gets into just developing relationships, mentoring, someone who's willing to help you to say, hey, listen, this is how you do it. How do you, balance those types of things? And so looking at that work-life balance piece, managing young children, okay, at that time, a middle schooler, an elementary schooler, then a middle schooler, and a high schooler all at the same time. And then a college student as well, because, of course, she's in college. Although you're not at the school every day, I hope you're not one of those types of parents that are calling the school, because we tell them, don't call us, okay? But we want him to develop and grow, all right? But she still needs you. She still needs that connection to you. How did you figure a way in terms of balancing that? Because it can be difficult, especially when you're working on that doctorate, and not just as a female, but anyone. But how did you, what types of strategies did you put in place for yourself to kind of manage that for yourself?
I really had to learn that no is a complete sentence. It is a complete response. And understand that one of the things I have always prided myself on is I've said I got one shot to be a parent. I have one shot to be mom, and all other things will fall in their place. And so for me, I have always found time that my family, my husband, and my children will always come first. So there were things that I had to give up. One of them was at my church. I was heavily involved with our grief ministry at our church, helping those individuals that were struggling with grief to get through. I had to pull back from that. I had to pull back from some of my civic responsibilities within my sorority and other organizations that I was with. I had to give it up. I could not serve on all the committees that I was asked to serve on and do my institutional responsibility at work. I had to say no. And that was very hard for me to say no. But understanding that the strategies in order to be effective with my husband and my children was I needed to be there. So my sacrifice many times was do what you need to do from them between 8 and 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. After that, when everybody is down, most of the time I was up completing assignments between 8 and 3 a.m. Go to bed for a couple of hours, wake back up at 6:30, get my son ready, and do it all over again. There were many times if my family is having something, what's your code so I can get onto the internet so I can log on. I always had my laptop, and they were just like, oh my God, like, do you No, I'm not. It doesn't stop until it's over. Like it just doesn't. So understanding there were many things I missed. I have not been on a vacation, a real vacation, in 4 years. I could not do it. There are many Saturdays where my Saturday is my day. Panera knows me personally. They give me cookies because I'm in there just writing, and I close them down frequently. But there's a sacrifice. And, my friends, one of my very close friends would say, I'll be glad when you're done with that. I want my friend back. My husband would say, I need my wife back. Like, when is this going to, but I made a vow. I was not going to lose my life, my children's life, my marriage to this program. So whatever else I needed to cut, I cut.
And that makes a big difference. And not everyone can understand those things, but it's certainly about prioritizing, and really about doing things. I remember, I went through my program first. Okay. And that was one of the things that I had to look at, sacrifices and certain things I had to let go. And one of the things that a friend of mine who had been through his PhD, he told me, he said, listen, you've got to put things in a calendar and schedule. He said, and that means writing. You got to put down time in terms of, put it in your calendar. Don't schedule anything else during that time that you're planning to write. But then also you got to put time in there for family as well. And so I remember initially when I had to put, I put time in for my wife, and she of course not understanding. I remember the conversation. What I'm just gonna be an appointment in your calendar now, da 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 da, whatever, and so having to explain to her that, hey, you are important to me. So I want to make sure that nothing else is going to take away this time. This is what we're going to do. And so this is our time. I'm not going to write. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do anything else during this time. This is our time. Just like when I'm ready to write, this is my writing time. And so you have to learn how to compartmentalize that time. And you also have to look at what you value, and that's huge. That makes a big difference.
And timing is everything. We all three of us did our journey at different times. I went straight through from college. I went straight into a doctoral program. And so I was doctor before I was Dr. Baldwin before I was Dr. Williams. And so I was already finished before I got married. So my focus was different. I was like, I didn't want to stop anywhere at that point. I knew what I wanted to do. And I was like, what do I need to do to get there? And so let's just keep going full straight ahead. But there's people who have different journeys. But the reason why I shared that is you can still end up at the same place. You don't have to take the same vehicle. And so there people who are listening can understand that you can do it in many different ways, but you can still get it done.
Right.
And that is the point. Get it done. And there's enough room out there there's no limit to how many people who can have this degree. If you're willing to work for it, it's out there for you.
Right. And you have to build your support system, and that's one of the things, going through the program when I did, my wife supported me the way that she knew how. And that's because at that time she really did not understand the journey. And she's spoiled rotten. And I take ownership to that, because I spoiled her, and so she really couldn't understand some of the things that I had to do. But it really wasn't until she went through her doctoral program and then she could see the sacrifices and things that I did, stepping up, as a husband, like, hey, we got this. You go study, you go to Panera, you go do this. And it was in that moment that she realized, hey, I get it. I understand, and she said, I apologize because I remember there were some things that I did that probably took your attention away from you. You studied. She said, but you did it, and you managed to get through that. And she said, thank you. She was very appreciative of that process, and that's one of the things I when someone's going through a program and I have an opportunity to talk to their spouse, that's one of the things I try to share with them, ways in which they can be supported, and help that person go through. That's why with Keisha, every time I saw Jason, are you letting her write? What are you doing? Leave her alone. Because it's one of those things that I always say, this too shall pass, and be supportive in that process, because this is a journey for us, in terms of this process, and when Dr. Samuels walks across that stage, Dr. Samuels is walking across that stage with her family in tow, her family earned those bars and those stripes with her, and that's the reality of it all, and so I always tell people it's doable. It is very, very doable. I listen to the horror stories of people getting divorced in this process and things of that nature. And it's like, no, trust God. If this is for you, if this is truly been ordained by God, you will not miss a beat. You will not want, you will not lack, you will not lose your family, and you go through this process together. And that's why I'm going to tell you, your prayer life will be forever changed going through this process. That's one thing I tell students. This program, doctoral programs will certainly change your prayer life. That's the reality of it all.
Bring you close to Jesus. It will bring you close to Jesus.
Listen.
And it will only be Jesus that can keep you in the midst of all of that confusion that is certain to come. And, it's a lot. It's a lot to it. It's a very personal process because it's a bar that only you can hop over. No one can shove you over it. Nobody can push you over. Nobody can hold you up. We can support you and we can cheer you on, but it's something that you have to run, and you're going to have to catapult yourself over that bar. It's absolutely a process.
And even deciding which program to go to is very important. As much as I wanted to go to a brick and mortar where I would go and sit in class and have that human touch. I mean, I'm a social worker, so I like that type of engagement. I knew it just was not possible. It was not possible. So I needed a program that had classes. I didn't want 16-week long classes. I needed 8-week, hit it, quit it, be done, move on. I needed that. And so I needed a program that allowed me to go in a cohort, but we only took one class at a time every 8 weeks. It did not stop. Like there are no breaks. There are no breaks in the program that I went through. But I found that program, I thoroughly enjoyed what I was learning about leadership and about what sound leadership looks like, what the dark side of that was one of my textbooks, The Dark Side of Leadership, that I thoroughly remember and enjoyed what I was learning, but I knew what I needed. I am the type of individual, I'm the type of learner that when I'm in, I'm in. Like you got me. Like I'm locked in. And so I am very intentional about what it is that I am trying to conceptualize and get into my being. So for me, having those classes that just kept going, no breaks. They don't give you time to take a break. No breaks. Okay. So that was what I needed. And I think sometimes, and looking back, I'm so happy that I went through a program like that. As much as I wanted that other, I would have loved to have gotten my degree from an HBCU. But unfortunately, what I wanted and what I needed at that time was packaged differently. And so I went where I felt I could be most successful, but still being authentic to who I am, my authentic self, and allowing myself to come through in the program, even when it came down to deciding what I was going to do my research on. Initially, I said, I don't know if I should just study African American women because I didn't want to offend anybody. But then I had to go back to my truth. This is what I feel. This is what I know is an issue, and I want to explore it more. I want to explore it more. So I stayed true to myself, even when I got a little pushback from my advisor and my reader about, well, why don't you look at, well, are you saying that this is only happening for African American women? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I want to understand why it's happening. And so even with that, identifying a program that is right for you and your family at that time. Because you can't tell my husband he can't give you a 2-minute elevator speech on phenomenological study in African American women, because he absolutely can. He feels like he earned this with me. And so
well, he did, he went one class at a time with you.
Yes.
Listen, and heard every iteration and change that you had to make.
Yes. Yes. So all of those factors are so important when you are deciding on this journey. I had a conversation with my entire family, with my husband and his competing schedule and his obligation to the community, with my daughter and my son. It is a family commitment. It is a family commitment. And each one of them just gave me what I needed to be successful during my 3.5, 4 years of being on this journey. And I named my dissertation. I try to be very intentional about everything I do. So my dissertation, her name is Naomi Pearl. And so I will always refer to Naomi Pearl, Naomi Pearl.
Well, she has successfully been birthed.
Yes. So what's next for Dr. Keisha Samuels from Shell Road? What's next for Dr. Keisha Samuels?
So I've always wanted to be a voice, be a light to those that I can be, who are receptive to it. I absolutely love teaching. But I would like to see what else is out there, and as far as other opportunities, professional opportunities. I love training. I love teaching. I love those. I love presenting. So of course I will hopefully I'm always applying to go somewhere to present something, but I really would like to get my research out there and explore more and see how I can be an advocate and for change for African American women, women of color in higher education. I would love to do a podcast. I feel that there's a book in me, another baby that I need to birth. So I'd like to explore those things. I want to continue to travel. I want to pay it forward. I feel that that is what God will have me to do. This journey is not in vain, and I just want to empower anybody to move forward with it, because I am telling you, imposter syndrome is so real. It is so real, and it will make you question every little thing that you do. So I would like to continue to stay in higher education. And I'd like to see what's on the other side of this thing. I would love to see that. For me, being able to go back home for me is Norfolk State University. So anybody out there listening, I would love to go back home and round out my career there. That would just be amazing to me. Norfolk State gave me so much. They taught me so much. I understand what it means to be humble. I understand what it means not to have. I understand what it means to be a blessing. And so I would love to round out my career at an HBCU, but I just want to continue to pay it forward, however that looks. In the community, in my home, in my church, abroad, I am open to it. So I will not let fear hold me back from doing anything else. This has shown me that I can, I did, and I'm going to pay it forward.
All right.
I love it. I love it. You are the little engine that did.
From Shell Road, yes.
Right. But the message, and I tell you, the message in there also, and just a plug and a shout out for our HBCUs. We get a lot from our HBCUs, and hearing your story, your testimony about losing your mom while you were in school, the love that was wrapped in Norfolk State, and can't nobody talk about Norfolk State like a pirate, but I'm gonna tell you, can't nobody else talk about Norfolk State, not even to a pirate. We're gonna defend Norfolk State too, But I'll tell you, that's what the love truly is all about with our HBCUs, and I'm glad that Norfolk State was able to wrap little Keisha Samuels from Shell Road in their arms, and look at her now, So that is truly. Remarkable. And that's why, like I said, I love our HBCUs and what they do for our young people, and our African American babies, our Black and brown children, because truly it's a place of growth, for us. And seeing you at this point and hearing your testimony certainly does give credence to why we still need HBCUs. I don't know why some people will still have that question of, are HBCUs still necessary? And yes, they are. They really are.
Every single day.
Yes, definitely so. One last thing, what would you say to, someone that's considering going to get their doctorate? What's one little nugget you would say to them?
I would say move forth. Do it afraid. If you're scared, just do it afraid. Things have a way of working themselves out if you are truly intentional and want to do it. Things will just come. It will just work out. So I tell my students, and they'll say, oh, I have students that are coming back and they've been removed and they're on, the second part of their life. And they say, I thought Blackboard was a blackboard you write on. No, baby, that's our LMS. That's how you're going to get your assignments. But I tell them, do it afraid. It's okay. Somebody's going to be there to help you. There's always a ram in the bush. There's always somebody who is going to help you if you are receptive to it. So do it afraid. Get you a mentor. You don't know what a mentor is? Get you somebody you like to talk to that got good sense. Talk to them. And they can lead you to somebody who can truly help you on your journey. But do it afraid, but just do it.
That's
right.
good stuff right there.
Yes, it is. Well, listen, I've had a good time at the table here this here day. So thank you so much, Dr. Keisha Samuels.
Dr. Keisha Samuels.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you both. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, listen, join us next Sunday right here back at WHOV Smooth 88.1.
The essence of HU.
Keep your fork.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.